When kindness met cruelty. The greeting that changed everything. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments. It helps YouTube share these tales with more sci-fi fans like you. I'd love to know who's watching today. The medical ship Compassion drifted through the outer reaches, its white hull gleaming against the black void. Inside, Dr. Sarah Mitchell checked the supply manifests for the third time that hour. Medications, surgical equipment, water purifiers, everything humanity needed to help the struggling colonies on the frontier. Another quiet day, said Nurse James Park, stretching in his seat. Makes me almost miss the chaos of Earth hospitals. Sarah smiled. Give it time. We'll hit the Drexel colony in 2 days. They've got a fever outbreak that'll keep us busy. The ship carried 23 medical personnel, no weapons, and a beacon that broadcast in every known language, medical vessel. We mean no harm. We offer aid to all who need it. That beacon had saved them twice before when pirates scanned them and moved on, looking for richer targets. Today, it would mean something different. The trap springs shut. The attack came without warning. 3 ships dropped out of nowhere, surrounding the Compassion like wolves circling prey. Their hulls were dark gray, covered in angular plating that seemed designed to intimidate. Captain Rodriguez, the communication officer, called out, voice tight with fear. We're being hailed. It's the Krell Dominion. Rodriguez's face went pale. Everyone knew about the Krell. A species that viewed mercy as weakness and kindness as stupidity. They conquered, enslaved, and destroyed anything that couldn't fight back. Put them through, Rodriguez said quietly. The screen filled with a face that looked almost human, except for the 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and skin the color of old bruises. The Krell commander smiled, showing teeth filed to points. Human medical ship, the alien said in perfect English. How convenient. We have wounded from our recent acquisitions. You will treat them. Rodriguez straightened her shoulders. We're a medical vessel. We help anyone who needs it. Bring your wounded aboard. The Krell's smile widened. Oh, you misunderstand. You'll come to us. All of you. And when you're done healing our soldiers, you'll serve us permanently. Humans make excellent slaves, I'm told. Especially the ones too weak to carry weapons. The choice nobody wanted. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Around the medical bay, her colleagues froze, their faces showing the same horror she felt. They'd joined the medical corps to save lives, not become property. We're protected under the Galactic Medical Conventions, Rodriguez said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Attacking medical vessels is a war crime. The Krell laughed, a sound like grinding metal. War crime? We don't recognize your laws. You have 10 minutes to prepare for boarding, or we'll blast your engines and take you by force. Either way, you're ours now. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Rodriguez turned to her crew, and Sarah saw tears in the captain's eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. Sarah stood up, her hands shaking but her voice clear. We do what we always do. We heal people. If that's what it takes to keep everyone alive, then that's what we do. Around her, the other medical personnel nodded slowly. They'd taken oaths to help the sick and injured, even if those patients were monsters. When healing becomes slavery. The Krell boarding party arrived exactly 10 minutes later. They moved through the Compassion like they owned it, shoving crew members aside, laughing at their fear. Sarah counted 15 of them, each carrying weapons that looked designed to cause maximum pain rather than quick death. This way, barked the boarding leader, a tall Krell with scars covering half his face. Our medical bay. Now. They were herded through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and blood, past cells holding other slaves from a dozen different species. Some reached out through the bars, begging in languages Sarah couldn't understand. Others just stared with empty eyes. The Krell medical bay was a nightmare. Wounded soldiers lay on tables, their injuries poorly bandaged, infection spreading. But these weren't victims of war, Sarah could see that immediately. These were soldiers who'd been hurt conquering peaceful worlds, enslaving populations, destroying families. Fix them, the scarred leader commanded. Make them strong enough to fight again. Or you'll take their place on the conquest ships. Sarah looked at James, at the other doctors and nurses. She saw the same conflict in their eyes. These creatures were monsters. But they were also patients who would die without help. We'll need our equipment from our ship, Sarah said quietly. Already being transferred, the Krell replied. You have everything you need. Now work. The price of compassion. They worked for hours. Sarah's hands moved automatically, cleaning wounds, administering antibiotics, setting broken bones. Each soldier she saved would go on to hurt others. Each life she preserved meant more death and suffering across the galaxy. But she couldn't stop. It wasn't in her nature. Around midnight ship time, a young Krell soldier grabbed her wrist as she changed his bandages. His grip was weak from blood loss, but his eyes were alert. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why heal us? We're taking your freedom. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because you're hurt. That's all that matters to me. He stared at her for a long moment, then released her wrist. You're weak, he said, but something in his tone had changed. It wasn't contempt anymore. It was confusion. 3 days passed. The human medical team worked without rest, pushed to their limits by Krell overseers who saw them as tools rather than people. They healed soldier after soldier, watching their patients return to active duty, knowing each one they saved meant more victims somewhere in the galaxy. On the 4th day, everything changed. The broadcast that echoed across space. Sarah was treating a chest wound when alarms screamed throughout the Krell ship. The Dominion soldiers who'd been watching the medical staff rushed to their battle stations, leaving only 2 guards behind. Through the ship's intercom, a human voice rang out clear and cold, "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You have violated the Galactic Medical Conventions by capturing the hospital ship Compassion and enslaving its crew. You have 5 minutes to release all prisoners and surrender, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet." The scarred Krell leader who'd first captured them burst into the medical bay, his 4 eyes wide with something Sarah had never seen in them before, fear. How many ships? He demanded. One of the guards checked a display and went even paler than usual. 47, Commander. They just appeared out of nowhere. They're surrounding our entire battle group. Impossible, the commander hissed. This is a medical ship. Why would they send a fleet? Sarah set down her instruments slowly, meeting his gaze with quiet steel in her voice. Because we're a medical ship. Because you broke the one law that every civilized species agrees on. And because humanity doesn't forgive that. When mercy ends. The commander's hand went to his weapon, but before he could draw it, the ship lurched violently. The lights flickered, emergency systems screamed, and somewhere deep in the vessel, explosions rumbled like distant thunder. They're firing, someone shouted. Precision strikes on our weapons and engines. Through the viewport in the medical bay, Sarah could see Earth warships surrounding them, their weapons ports glowing with barely restrained power. These weren't the explorers or traders that most species knew. These were humanity's guardians, the ones who appeared when someone crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The commander stared at the fleet, his scarred face twisted in disbelief. For a medical ship? You'd start a war for 23 healers? Sarah stood tall, her exhaustion forgotten. We're not starting a war. You did, the moment you touched our people. We came out here to help anyone who needed it. You taught us that kindness has limits. And you just found them. The intercom crackled again, Admiral Chen's voice calm and absolute, 2 minutes remaining. Surrender or die. The Krell commander looked at his guards, at the human medical staff, at the fleet surrounding his ship. Sarah watched him calculate odds he couldn't win, consider options that didn't exist. Stand down, he said finally, his voice hollow. Release the prisoners. Signal our surrender. As Earth Marines poured into the ship to secure it, Sarah sat down heavily on a medical cot. James put a hand on her shoulder. We're going home, he said softly. Sarah nodded, but she couldn't smile. She'd saved lives because that's what she did. But she'd also learned something dark about the universe. Sometimes kindness isn't enough. Sometimes you need someone willing to fight for those who heal rather than hurt. Yeah, she whispered. Home. But she knew she'd never forget the Krell soldier's question, why heal us? Because that's what humans did. They offered mercy first. But when mercy was answered with cruelty, when healing was met with chains, then humanity showed its other face. The one that made even predators afraid. The lesson written in fire. The trial that shook the galaxy. The Krell commander, whose name translated roughly to Vex the Conqueror, stood in the center of the galactic court. The courtroom was massive, a sphere of transparent crystal that floated in neutral space between sectors. Representatives from 40 species watched from all angles, their faces showing everything from sympathy to rage. Sarah sat in the witness section, her hands folded in her lap. 2 weeks had passed since the rescue, but she still felt the weight of those days treating soldiers who'd enslaved her. Dr. Mitchell, the judge called out, a Quillan elder whose feathered crest shifted colors with emotion. Please describe your treatment during captivity. Sarah stood, her voice steady. We were forced to heal Krell soldiers who'd been wounded during conquest operations. We worked without rest for 4 days. Any hesitation resulted in threats against our lives. They made it clear we'd become permanent slaves if we didn't comply. Deck's translator hissed his response, we needed medical care. They had the skills. That's simple logic. You had medical care, Admiral Chen interrupted from the prosecution side. You had Krell doctors. What you wanted was slaves. The judge's crest flared orange, anger in Quillan culture. The court recognizes that medical ships are neutral ground by unanimous galactic law. Commander Vex, you violated this law deliberately. What is your defense? Deck's 4 eyes fixed on Sarah. Humans are weak. They don't even carry weapons on their medical ships. In Krell culture, weakness invites domination. We simply acted according to our nature. When philosophy meets reality. The courtroom erupted in argument. Some species nodded, survival of the strong was a common philosophy. Others looked horrified at such casual dismissal of basic decency. The judge called for silence. If might makes right, as you claim, then you accept that humanity's response was justified? Deck's translator was silent for a moment. What response? They negotiated our surrender. Admiral Chen stood, his uniform crisp, his expression carved from stone. With respect, Commander, you misunderstand. We didn't negotiate. We gave you a choice, surrender or die. There's a difference. A holographic display activated, showing the space around the Krell battle group during the rescue. 47 human warships surrounded by 15 Krell vessels, but the numbers told only part of the story. Computer, Chen commanded. Show tactical analysis. The display changed, highlighting weapon emplacements, shield generators, engine capacities. The Krell ships glowed red, outmatched, outgunned, already defeated before a single shot was fired. You had 17 seconds of life remaining when you surrendered, Chen said calmly. Our targeting systems had already locked onto every critical system on every ship in your fleet. 1 more second, and your entire battle group would have been debris. Deck's skin color shifted to something Sarah had learned meant fear in Krell body language. Impossible. You couldn't have moved that fast. We didn't move fast, Chen replied. We moved the instant you captured the compassion. We tracked you for 3 days, positioned ourselves perfectly, and waited for you to refuse mercy one last time. The cost of crossing humans. Chen turned to address the entire court. Many species here view humanity as weak because we prefer diplomacy to war, healing to harming, building to destroying. Let me clarify something that Commander Vex learned too late. The display changed again, showing Earth's military deployments across known space. Not the explorers or traders everyone knew, but the hidden fleet, hundreds of warships stationed in strategic positions, watching, waiting. Humanity doesn't show weakness when we help others, Chen said, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. We show strength. The strength to choose mercy when we could choose violence. But here's what predators always forget, choosing mercy isn't the same as being unable to fight. It just means we'd rather not. He pointed at Vex. You tested that choice. You found the line. And now every species in this court needs to understand what happens when someone crosses it. The judge leaned forward. Admiral Chen, are you threatening military action? No, Your Honor, Chen replied. I'm explaining policy. Touch our medical ships, our aid workers, our civilians trying to help others, and we will come for you. Not with negotiations. Not with warnings. We will come with the absolute certainty that you will regret every decision that led to that moment. The sentence that changed everything. The trial lasted 3 more days. Witness after witness testified, freed slaves who'd been taken by Krell forces, colonies destroyed in their conquests, species reduced to property under their rule. The evidence was overwhelming. When the judge finally spoke, her crest had turned the deep blue of sorrow. Commander Vex, you are found guilty of war crimes, slavery, and violation of medical neutrality. Your sentence is permanent exile to a penal colony. Your entire battle group will be dismantled. And the Krell Dominion will pay reparations to every species you've harmed. Vex didn't rage or argue. He simply asked one question: why does it matter so much? Why risk war for 23 healers? Sarah stood without being called, her voice cutting through the courtroom. Because if you can take us without consequence, you can take anyone. Because the moment healing becomes dangerous, everyone suffers. Because we went out there to help people, and you taught us that goodness needs guardians. She walked closer to him, and even though he stood a head taller, he seemed to shrink back. You were right about one thing. We are weak. We can't fight like you can. We're not built for conquest. But we're human, and that means when you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us. And then you learn that we might prefer peace, but we're very, very good at war when you force us to fight. The warning that spread across stars. 6 months later, Sarah returned to duty aboard a new medical ship, Compassion 2. The design was almost identical to the first, with one difference: a small plaque near the airlock. It read, "We heal all who ask. We harm none who respect that. But we are protected by those who love us. Test that at your own risk." James stood beside her as they prepared for their first mission. Think anyone will try again? Sarah looked out at the escort ships flanking them, not obvious warships, but modified frigates that could be anywhere in hours if needed. Humanity had made its point clear: medical personnel would never travel unprotected again. Maybe, she said. But they'll remember what happened to Vex. They'll remember that humanity offered peace first and showed mercy even to those who enslaved us. And they'll remember what happened when that mercy was rejected. The ship's engines hummed to life, carrying them toward a colony that needed supplies after a natural disaster. As they jumped into faster-than-light travel, Sarah smiled sadly. The Krell had wanted to teach humanity that weakness invited domination. Instead, they'd taught the galaxy something more important: that choosing kindness didn't mean lacking strength. It meant having the power to destroy and choosing to heal instead. Until someone forced a different choice. The new era begins. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Traders whispered it in spaceports. Diplomats referenced it in negotiations. Military planners studied it in tactical courses. The tale of the medical ship Compassion became legend: how humanity sent healers into the darkness, how they were captured and enslaved, how they chose to save their captors' lives anyway. And how, when that mercy was answered with chains, humanity came with fire. Predatory species learned to check twice before attacking ships with red crosses on their hulls. Slavers started avoiding human vessels entirely. Pirates who'd once seen medical ships as easy targets now treated them like sacred ground. Because everyone remembered what Admiral Chen had said, "Touch our healers, and we will come for you." And humanity always kept its promises. In the Galactic Court, a new law was passed unanimously, the Compassion Doctrine. Any attack on verified medical personnel from any species would be treated as an attack on all civilizations. The punishment would be carried out by volunteer forces from across the galaxy. Humanity volunteered first. Sarah heard about the new law while treating a family in the outer colonies. She smiled, knowing that her capture had somehow made the galaxy safer for every healer, human or alien. "We did it," James said, reading the news over her shoulder. "We made them understand." Sarah nodded, but her smile was bittersweet. "We made them understand that kindness has guardians. That mercy has teeth when it needs them. And that humanity will always protect those who choose to heal instead of hurt." She looked up at the stars, thinking of all the medical personnel across the galaxy who now traveled safer because of what had happened to her crew. "The price of mercy," she whispered, "is being willing to fight for those who won't." And across the darkness of space, humanity stood watch, ensuring that those who healed could do so without fear. Because that's what humans did. They offered peace first, mercy second, and violence only when every other option was exhausted. But when that moment came, when kindness was met with cruelty and healing with chains, then the galaxy learned what humans had always known, that the kindest souls often have the fiercest protectors. And those protectors never, ever forget.